Hello Internet, and welcome to my review for Fairy Tail episodes 309 and 310. When we last left off, Lucy and Brandish had their fight, as Brandish could not let her feelings of fondness for Lucy and Natsu get in the way of her mission any longer. But Demaria showed up and was like, nah, she's trying to lose to you, to make it seem real. And then a bunch of stuff happens. Demaria ties Brandish, Lucy, and Natsu all up. But END awakens, beats up Demaria, and goes to wander towards Zeref, where he runs into Demon Slayer Gray, and they're about to have a battle that never quite makes any sense from a thematic sense, but whatevs. So yeah, let's jump right on in. So, I'm conflicted about Gray at the beginning of the episode. Even beyond just Natsu and Gray as is kind of Naruto-Sasuke conflict, as opposed to, as I mentioned last time, the Zoro-Sanji dynamic they've always had. This still just feels weird. But, like, it's very clear to me that Gray's out of his mind. Not only is he blaming Natsu for what Deviora did, and blaming Natsu for his parents' death and Or's death, but also he's blaming him, he's saying that demons in the Book of Zeref killed Juvia, which is not true. Well, no one killed Juvia because Juvia's still alive, but Invel, in Gray's mind, killed Juvia, and Invel is not a demon from the Book of Zeref. So it's very so while it's very clear that Gray's out of his mind, at times I wonder if the narrative is aware that Gray's out of his mind, because it never quite acts like it is the thing. And, like, I don't know if there's a better way to show that without just beating the audience over the head with how out of his mind Gray is. So I don't really know how I feel about it. It's a weird thing. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. So it's just kind of weird. Meanwhile, Juvia and Lucy are both heading to the battlefield to stop Gray and Natsu from their murderous rampage, not knowing the murderous rampage is now directed at each other, by the way. But then we finally find out what made Natsu finally lose it when he woke up in the time gap, and go full-on, I have to kill Zeref now, END mode. And it was seeing Lucy dead, or seemingly dead, as a result of him being in Demaria's time and Lucy not. So that thought of Lucy being dead is what pushed him over the edge. So have fun with that, all you Nalu shippers. I've never really been one, but you know what? Have at it. Have at it. Meanwhile, where we spend the rest of the episode, back with the bulk of Fairy Tail's forces, Irene uses her, like, giant eye spell to try to find Mavis and creep Fairy Tail out at the same time, which fails because Mavis uses that plays off of that in a move to rejuvenate Fairy Tail's morale and just, like, show her where Irene is. Ha, your plotting won't work because I'm just right here. So, in conclusion, we stan Mavis, okay? But Irene does have the last laugh as she enchants the Alvarez soldiers into powerful, mindless berserkers that just puts Fairy Tail in a really bad place. Erza, though, is doing mighty fine work for someone who, in the scope of 2 days, has fought and been badly beaten up by 2 of the 12. You know, like the carryover of damage is something kind of have to put in the back of your mind in Fairy Tail. But it wasn't that long when she was having to be long ago since she was having to be been carried around by Gray everywhere. It's a minor thing, you know, it's far from the most important thing in this episode, so I'm going to give that a pass. Anyway, the Berserkers are utterly decimating Fairy Tail. Admittedly, it's only like the Macau and Wakaba class members of importance, who are getting beat up and nearly killed, but seeing most of the guild lying defeated is still striking, and lends the rationale to Makarov's next move, which is where we need to get into the fairy law scene. So, a long time ago, when this scene in the manga first came out, I made fun of it as like, Mavis tells Makarov, oh, I have a plan, there's a way out of this, and Makarov just blows her off to go kill himself. And from a logical level, that criticism is right. Makarov probably should have just let Mavis do her plan, and he would be fine. But for all Makarov knew, any of the guild members, any of Makarov's children, could have died before Mavis's plan went off. And Makarov would rather die than watch his kids die. So, given who Makarov is as a man, he made the right call. You know, of course Makarov would sacrifice himself for everyone else. He's an old man, he's lived his life, and it's time for the next generation to live their life. That is very much who Makarov has always been, and that's who he is in the end. So, as hard as a scene that is to watch, I don't have any logical complaints with it. And from an emotional level, out of the fucking park. Holy shit. The scene was great, and I cried. It was fantastic. Like, God, Makarov. Makarov is a kind of interesting character to me from I guess, my relationship to him standpoint. He's a character I don't think about, ever. And then he pulls shit like this, and we see all this shit he's done, and I'm like, oh yeah, Makarov, man. He's great. And yeah, he's just in this weird place where, like, you never really think about him until you're being, like, reminded of him, and you're like, oh yeah, Makarov is amazing. I love him. So yeah, anyway, Makarov is dead. He takes out, as Irene tells Zeref, 70 to 80% of the Alvarez forces with him, but he's out of there. He is a statue, he is dead. You know, dead as a fucking doornail dead. But then, we have the 309 ends with the short resolution of a Natsu-Gray fight. As Erza just appears between their blows. We know she was just a second ago with Makarov, and then she pops up with Natsu and Gray. And so, while it's a great moment, especially seeing when she grabs Natsu and Gray's punch, the Gray hand is, like, frozen over down to, like, her elbow or so, and this hand is also, like, burned and crackling away. And it reminds us of how Erza has basically been an older sister to these two, so of course she'd be the one to stop them. More on that when we get to 310 in a hot second. It's weird how fast Erza gets there. Like, I don't remember this being a problem in the manga. Most of my issues with Alvarez I remember from the manga, and this is not one of them. So, in the manga, was there just more time between Makarov killing himself with Fairy Law and Erza showing up at Natsu and Gray's fight? I feel like there was a good couple of chapters in between there. So maybe Fairy Tail 2018 is just finally rearranging its source material. It's not rearranging it in a good way, which is kind of disappointing. It gets rid of its March problem as soon as it's not going through the March problem. But yeah, that's my really complaint there. But I'm willing to forgive that, moving on to 310, and even all the weirdness of Natsu and Gray fighting like this in the first place, for how much I love that whole damn scene. Like, the sibling relationship between Natsu, Gray, and Erza hasn't really been talked about in a long time. These three don't spend that much time together. But these three grew up together. You know, their entire relationship for, you know, the 7 or so years after Natsu and Gray joined the guild was built around their relationship with each other as, like, this weird sibling unit. And seeing all that history on display really brings home how much they all care about each other. I never even realized, like similarly to Makarov, I never realized how important their relationship is, how great the relationship is, until just now. Like, oh, yeah, of course they're great. We also get a glimpse of what was always Erza's fate, becoming Guildmaster, which would absolutely be how the series ends. As she copies what Makarov told them in the past about fighting. It's just a great scene. You know? Like, good fucking work, Fairy Tail. That was a hard scene to watch. It was a fucking great one. Meanwhile, Crime Sorcière finally gets something to do this season. And I think besides, like, Angels had a little bit to do this season, but with Yukino and ferrying the gang to Alvarez in the first place. But I don't think the rest of the gang has done anything since they joined Crime Sorcière at the beginning of Tartaros. Of course, they were infamously late to the Tartaros fight, my biggest issue with the Tartaros arc, which is by and large my favorite Fairy Tail arc. But yeah, they do fight an utterly unwinnable battle against August. And we'll talk about their conversation later on, but that'll be a big one. Then we had the line I fucking forgot about. I forgot about all of the fandom what the fucking when Irene dropped I am you, you are me into her conversation with Erza. I'll let y'all piece that together if you're an anime only, but like, I'm trying to remember how it makes sense, given what I know about the truth about Irene, and I cannot put it together. Then again, it has been 2.5 years since the stuff happened in the manga, so it's all a little vague in my head, but whatever. Anyway, now Irene's here because Team Natsu just didn't have enough on their plate, you know. Anyway, moving on to what's kind of the main thing of 310. Before we get there, though, we're getting to Larcade. Just getting that out of the way, because there's a lot to talk about Larcade. Before then, there's this theme both with Minerva and Rogue as they watch their stories fade away, and with Yukino and Angel, where they're both super happy that Fairy Law was cast. And there's this irony, because they don't know what happened. They don't know that Makarov had to die for that. And so there's this kind of, you know, this kind of dramatic irony to it. And it's a really nice bit. It's really sad, but it's nice. Anyway, Larcade. We're here, y'all. We are here. We're fucking here. It's the Who Fucks episode. In case you could not figure it out from Mashima's very on-the-noseness with this, Larcade's power is to make anyone who is not a virgin orgasm to death. That's where we're at. It's just so weird. They're so unlike anything else going on in this arc. It's this, I don't even know why that was a power idea. Whose idea was it? Yes. I will make the villain's power anyone who has fucked will orgasm to death. It's so funny to me. And like, we find out who's fucked. I mean, Larcade is fucking Zeref's son, so probably with Mavis, so there's a sexual component to their relationship that Mavis, in her right, did not let us be privy to in her flashback. Loxus fucks, because of course he does. Minerva fucks, because of course she does. Angel fucks, because of course she does. Rogue fucks. What? I don't know about that. Luckily, no one on Team Natsu fucks, so they're ready to fight Irene. Irene also fucks. Keep that in mind. But yeah, so Erza tells the rest of Team Natsu to go and get the unconscious Gray, Natsu, and Juvia somewhere safe, while she stands against Irene, joined by Wendy, which we saw right before the war started. There's that scene of Wendy swearing to protect Erza. And this is kind of the culmination of that. I think there was also a bit of that with the Gilles. Didn't she like pick her up as she was falling from Gilles' ship, I think. But yeah, this is very much kind of the culmination of their relationship that we see really kick off in that bath scene before the war started. Also, Wendy gives the best parts of the Irene fight, so that'll be the good stuff. A lot of people hate the Irene fight, and there are plenty of reasons to hate the Irene fight. But Wendy's involvement is not one of them. Anyway, back to Larcade. Kagura shows up, right? So we find out that Larcade doesn't just have orgasm to death powers if you fucked. He also has little energy tendrils that can make you orgasm to death even if you haven't fucked. That's superpowers right there. But yeah, that's when we find out that Larcade is Zeref's son. And August has this whole speech about Zeref's son, about how Zeref could never love Larcade, his son. And there's some really great foreshadowing in there that I cannot talk to you about, so don't go looking for it, because there are some huge what-the-fuck moments going around there. But that's all I have to say for Loxus in this episode. A couple more things before we're done. This has been a really rough 24 hours for Kagura. Like, barely a day ago, she was sliced up by Demaria, and back in Hargion, and then the very next day, she gets sliced up again by Larcade. Like, give the girl a break! We can't all be Erza! I mean, just because Erza can handle fighting 2 of the 12 and then fighting a 3rd member of the 12 doesn't mean the rest of the world can do that. But that's really all we see of that fight. One last thing is, as the episode ends, August is like, oh, the only one who could stop the Emperor's son. Pay very close attention that he always only says the Emperor's son. That'll be very important later on. Is his mother. So that does confirm that Mavis is Larcade's mother. But we see Mavis and Loxus again, as that happens, who are still being affected by Larcade's wide-ranging spell, despite the fact that I skipped this over this moment earlier, but Zeref tells Larcade to cut it out, because he's hurting Irene and probably August. You don't actually see August in there, so maybe not August. But, you know, Irene, and if Larcade kills Irene, that's a really bad thing. So why are Mavis and Loxus still being affected by it? I don't know. That's not important, though. Anyway, so these were some pretty good episodes. They were vastly different in tone, making them very hard to review together, but I've done it, so you know. The first one was very somber, as it dealt with both Natsu and Gray's brawl and Makarov's death, the latter of which is much better, of course, just because Natsu versus Gray never made any sense again. And while Erza stopping them connected the 2 episodes, even Erza's phenomenal scene at the start of 310 felt like it was a part of 309 that spilled over into 310 before the more sexual hijinks of Larcade came to be. Still, 310 was fun in its own right, both giving us the infamous I am you, you are me line, and the infamous let's find out who's a virgin moment. Still, all the talk about Zeref-san gives us plenty to chew on. Next time, Sting joins the fight against Larcade, and we take a trip inside Natsu's mind. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the episode and the video. If you did, feel free to leave a like or subscribe or, you know, do whatever makes you happy, you know? And remember, your life is your own, okay? Bye!